Are you ready to dive deep into altars? And welcome to Prophecy. Are you ready to dive deep into altars and altered realities like dreams and dream yoga and sacred space? So today, I'm your host, Diadara DD, and I'll be joined by Raven Alexandria from Sublimatorium, and we are extremely excited to talk about these different things and how they actually, altars and dreams are connected. And so we're going to be diving and looking and really trying to bridge these ideas into our daily practices. So let's get Raven with us. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome. And if you're catching this live, I hope this is finding you in a beautiful space. Hey, Raven.
Namaste. How's it going?
Namaste. Everything's really well. How are you?
I'm doing lovely. I have my black shungite here I'm going to be holding.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So we're just going to start off. You can start off with some mantras, and then we're going to jump into our topic of the day, which is altars and dreams. So start us off, and then we can talk about what are altars.
Okay. Namo Vishwabhadaya Sarvatilesh Mighty AC Om Gam Ganapati Namaha, Om Gam Ganapati Namaha, Om Gam Ganapati Namaha. Jai Devi.
Jai Ma.
Thank you to our gurus and everyone who showed up today. We are so excited to get started again with Prophecy. We took a little break during Virgo, and it really made us think about what are altars, because everyone's been in quarantine for so long. It's like a great time to connect with an altar energy where, we keep these altars in our home. And so an altar, if you think about the word altar, it's like the other word altar, right? There's one with an A and one with an E. And so altar means to change. And then so an altar with an A, you're integrating your consciousness with a higher intelligence so that you can see that the altar is a focal point within matter where you, the immortal self, you can disidentify with dull matter. So you are the Atma, and so the altar is a place where you learn that you are not matter, because as you will learn in this talk, you're going to learn that the material elements, earth, air, fire, water, time, space, these things, they intersect at an altar like a vortex. And so the altar teaches you that you can synchronize your body, your subtle body, and your senses, your physical body, with the elements, with fire, air, earth, water, ether, and then that you can go further and then use the altar as a portal to connect with deities, any entity that your heart imagines. So I'm really excited to get deeper into it with what Daya has gotten, because she's been getting a lot of downloads. So let's go.
Yes. So we're going to start off, that's a great way of just summarizing basically what an altar is. It really is this transformative space. So the first altar that we come in contact with is the actual body, because the body, as we know, is the temple, and the altar. So just to differentiate what a temple is and then an altar, because they do differentiate. A temple would be a whole space that is for an altar to be placed, for the worship to be done, for the cook, the dinner, and it's just a whole, like a center, right? And then you have the altar, which is the space that you would designate for the worship. And so our first altar that we come in contact with is the body. So as Raven said, that we are the Atma, and the Atma is the individual conscious self. And so that means that we are all personalities, right? As you can see, me and Raven, when we're doing these prophecies, it's really about taking our authentic self, making it more known, making us more aware. And so when we view the body as an altar, or we view the body as a temple and as the heart, which is where they say in the Vedas the soul sits. The Atma is in the heart, and it's like the seat. So therefore, and also they say that, if we want to get deeper, Atma and then Para Atma. So then there's there's the Atma, the self, and then the super self sitting on the altar of inside the heart, creating this temple. And so when we are, you know, taking care of ourselves. So, you know, when it comes to temple and altar worships, it's all about cleanliness, purification, you know, transformation and things like this. So just in regards to our cleanliness, you know, we wake up, we take a shower, we brush our teeth, we give ourselves the nutrients we need, you know, we give ourselves self-massage, abhyanga, you know, we literally are understanding that this is the vessel. So that kind of brings in the question of like separating, okay, well, the body is this temple and there's this Atma. So can we know more? What is the self? And so the altar is also a place, you know, that can be where we try to discover the self, because it's like we've been asleep. It's like this dormant, you know, sleeping thing. And that's what happens when we enter into the material world and Maya. And so when we start to purify and go through a transformative process, we start to become aware and conscious. And this is how we relate to the soul and the altar that is within us in this body. So there's multiple bodies, right? We have the subtle bodies, we have the spiritual, we have the mental, we have the emotional, we have the intelligence, we have the mind. They separate these things. So not only is the body, you know, being the one that's transforming the physical body, but it's also those subtle bodies. So, you know, we have to understand that when we're going towards an altar, when we start to create altars, that, you know, this is it's an all-in process. Your whole body, your whole emotions, all of your being is going to be connected to now an external altar. So that is basically the internal, the body as a temple. I don't know, Raven, if you have anything to add about, you know, the body as a temple and the heart sitting in the Atma sitting in the heart as the altar, before I get into, you know, the external altars.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, like with the play on words, the word altar with an A and then altar with an E, really the altar is a focal point so that you can have a steady sense of where you are at all times, as the world of Maya or illusions, it's always changing around us. And so the altar is like, you know, that focus where you take, it's the place you go to focus. And so that's a great way to put it. If you see that Earth itself is a part of a larger realm of Trilokas, of multiple planets, and Earth is a place that we come to learn how to focus on being the Atma, and we're wrapping all of the matter. And so
through the body as a vessel, through the body as a vessel, you know, it's really important. I love that the idea that, you know, we are, you know, communing with a greater, you know, awareness. And I think it's also the dristi, you know, we talk about this one pointedness. And so when we start to focus, like you're saying, the altar is this focus point. And so when we're starting to do the practice for self-realization within the heart, understanding who we are, we start to focus, we start to create this connection with our third eye, we start to function with the chakras. And that's when we start, you know, if you are a spiritual practitioner, this is when you want to create the external altar. So, you know, there's two types of external altars. There's the temporary. And so if anyone wants to write down any ideas of temporary altars, I'm going to name a few, but maybe I missed some, and we can see if anyone in the who's watching can bring out some examples. But some of the examples of temporary altars, which would be something that you could find in nature. For example, you go to nature and you pick up some stones, you pick up some flowers, you grab some of, you know, whatever it is, anything around, and then you create something, maybe a little offering, a little sacred space for the, you know, for the earth, or for whatever your intentions are. There's also, you know, the sand mandalas that the Buddhist monks do. And this also is a practice to help disassociate with the body and the temporalness of it and the temporalness of life. And so this, again, so this is why some altars are temporary, because it shows that everything has an ending and also has a beginning, and it kind of is this loop, samsara. And so for the Buddhist monks who are doing these very intricate, and you can find this in other places, in other indigenous cultures as well, like in India, you know, where they are, even here in I've seen it during this time, Dia de los Muertos, where people are making like colored art, sand art, and they know it's going to be destroyed. They put hours and hours, and this thing is going to be destroyed. But at this moment, we're going to honor it. So there's also celebratory altars, like right now for Dia de los Muertos, ancestral altars. You put them up at a certain time for the focus of this particular season. And so there is this idea of, you know, celebrating ceremonies. For example, if you are going to have a, you know, anything, a baby, all these things, medicine ceremonies, ayahuasca, peyote, cacao, these ceremonies, they're all, you know, they all always create an altar so that there's a focus during the ceremony, so that the ceremony can be held in a space, and there can be, again, a focus of the idea that this place and space is is sacred. And this is creating a vortex. And, you know, we're going to talk about deeper into this, but just this idea of the creating a vortex, that the altars, you know, ultimately start to create power, especially when they are installed, or when they are home altars, meaning that you're going to be working with them, you know, forever. You know, they might change, but this is like the altar you'll go through and you'll have in your home. So do you want to say anything about temporary altars?
One of the coolest temporary altars I think about in daily life is graffiti. You know, it's graffiti in and of itself. It's a temporary altar in that it just goes up really fast, and it's meant to alter your perception of how art acts with the public. And so I think that's altar. And then also crop circles. I'm looking into crop circles right now, and I think that they're like alien altars, where it's like we're supposed to go to them and they change our perception.
And those are vortexes.
Yes, they're vortexes.
And they alter your energy, right? Yes. So they're altering. So the altars are altering energy. They're transforming. They're alchemizing. And so, you know, we have these temporary altars that show the temperance of everything. But when you have these home altars, this is where your really daily practice comes into play. For me, I have about 4 altars right now going on in my own home. You know, I would prefer a room that would be just my altars, you know, but do what we got to do. I'm sure, you know, Raven, you can attest, we have several altars, and we're constantly even creating altars. We're creating smaller, you know, those temporary altars, the grids and things like that, which we haven't said anything about, but crop circles, grids. So installations, so home altars, these are going to be more, not necessarily eternal, but they have more of a connection with our daily energy. When you look at where to place an altar, most of the indigenous cultures are usually going to say in the north or in the east. So we all know that there's like these ideas of directions, and you know, they have their special power. The north is the side of the ancestors, it's the winter, it's, you know, and then you have the south, which is this discovery and freedom and things like this, and learning. And you have the east, which is like new beginnings, you know, springtime. And so you have all these correlations. And so Vastu, which is the ancient way to see how energy works with all spaces, as far as all the directions and the way that you put a door and doorways, because this is all energy. And that's where we come into feng shui. And so, you know, that we talk about that a lot. When you're thinking of building a home or things like this, you should, you know, put it in our thing. So someone is saying east. So yeah. So in India, it's mostly northeast that they say. Northeast is the way in an Indian way. So when you're creating these home altars, you have to have intention. You have to be, you know, again, focused, right? We're talking focusedness. And so there is mantras and rituals. So we're going to really get into rituals too, because rituals have a big say when it comes to altars and when it comes to the idea of the practice and the purification process. So I do see there's a comment, so I'll read it in a little bit, just going to keep going. So the rituals that we do for our altars are going to be always it could be free. You know, you can have your culture that you practice or what resonates to you, that can be a part of your altars. There's always kind of a basis of altars, though. It's usually going to be with the elements. So you're always going to want to represent the elements in your altar. And those elements are connected with our senses. And this is going to be purifying us. So the altar becomes this visualization of purification. And everything that we're going to be doing with our altar is to help purify our bodies, so that we can realize that we are not this body, and we can realize who the self is. And this is when we become more devoted to just our consciousness and devoted to the deities, or those that we connect with, our ancestors, you know, whatever you feel called to, you know, commune with on a daily basis, or even just a monthly, weekly basis, you know, whatever it is in your practice. So when we talk about, I'm just going to briefly explain a puja, and this also can be seen in like Mexica, like what I just, I went through a type of initiation, which we're going to talk a little bit about initiations, but I feel like I kind of went through an initiation yesterday, and it had to do with the altars, and it had to do with dancing, like for my ancestors on Dia de los Muertos in a vortex where I'm living at in Sayulita. And so, you know, you can see the same cultural practices being, you know, shared across different cultures. And so we have the elements, we have fire. So we always want to light a fire, light a deepa, a little candle with ghee, or, you know, copal, you get some coal, you burn copal, sage, you know, again, ethical sage, you know, things that we're doing ethically, palo santo, these things should be, you know, done in regards to the cultures that you are doing it. It shouldn't be something that we're buying and things like this. So that fire is representing our fire within as well. So we're burning, we're alchemizing, we're taking this transmutation energy, and then we're going to add some water, right? We're going to have water. We're going to have a cup of water. If we are offering it to deities, we can pray some mantras and say, you know, here is this water. And this water, we can drink it afterwards, right? We can drink the water. You can drink the water afterwards, and then the water purifies you. Mm-hmm. Then you have earth, and earth is like the food, right? The food and the flowers as well, or just any plants and anything from the earth, rocks, crystals. And with the earth, we can touch it, we can feel it. It purifies our sense of touch, and it purifies our sense of smell, like smelling the food being cooked, or smelling, you know, the roses. And things like this, like the flowers that we're going to offer. We have the air, which we can offer with, you know, a fan, or even the representation by a feather, because this is, you know, the birds are connected with the air quality. And then can also just, again, purifying our feelings and things like this. And then we have the ether, which can be symbolized by sound, by the conch, by the bell. So these things, you know, are purifying we're purifying our hearing. We're purifying all the senses. And this purification process, again, is leading us into understanding who we are. And, you know, and this is going to be connected with the collective, right? So before I get into the collective, would you like to add anything, Raven, about pujas, and before I start talking about the collective altar?
Just briefly, this is a very scientific process. You know, if you study science and you go beyond the surface level rhetoric of, you know, terms, then you see the connection with all ways of knowledge. And so this is why it's so important to connect to the elements in your practice, so that you can start to use it as a form of your own personal science that you can integrate with modern science. It's not that they're fighting, that they should go together. It's because one is about the self, science of the self, and the other is also a form of science of the self. You have psychology, but also not just people who get PhDs and go to all these expensive schools are doing science. You know, we're studying elements in our own ways. And so hopefully, if we continue to carry on the process, we can make it more mainstream and acceptable, so we can do everything in a proper way.
Right, and we're seeing results. So when I'm saying, you know, you're purifying your senses and doing all these things, okay, sounds great, but the only way you're going to prove me wrong is if you practice this, right? Is if you practice this and if you see that there is no results. It's like meditation, right? It's like if you never meditated in your life and you're like, meditation doesn't work. It's like, well, have you tried it? Right? So it's like, and that's the same with the practice, especially a daily practice. When we do those types of things, when we make a little sacrifice, you know, a yajna, then, you know, then we're able to, again, go beyond what we're seeing and cross the veil, which is, you know, what, you know, alters and altering realities, like the dreams that we're going to talk about. So before we get into that, we want to talk about the altar, you know, so we say there's the body as an as the heart as the seat of the altar, and the body as the temple. And then we have the temporary altars in nature and, you know, things like this for celebrating, or even mourning. I didn't mention that, but also mourning, because funerals and things like this, we also make altars during this time, and it can be a place where we mourn. So it's not always celebratory. And then also the installations, home, temples, you know, with mantras, with more ritualistic things. And then we have the collective, the sacred, the cosmos, the earth, as above, so below, you know, connected with all beings. So this is really where the practice, like Raven just said, where we can take this to more, not necessarily everyone's doing it, we hope, you know, but at least like a majority, or at least a strong part of us are doing this, and we're creating this energy and this movement. And so when we're honoring the elements and we're honoring the directions, we're honoring the universe, we're honoring the stars. You know, when we study astrology, of course we want to know about us, but it's also about them. It's also about what they're doing in their cycles and how they're transforming the consciousness of everyone as well. And, you know, I didn't really talk about this, but Deva worship, and I know Raven will say this, you know, the deity worship. And so when we're connecting more and more with beings, and we're connecting more with this cosmic space, we started creating, again, this vortex. We're creating, you know, this like powerful grid. And so, like I was saying, these things can be found in our indigenous, you know, traditions. They can be found in remote islands, uncontacted people. There's always going to be some way that the people are going to be connecting with consciousness outside of them, either if it's through the plants, it's through the elements. It can be the simplest thing, or it can be the most complicated stuff, but there's always this essence. And that is what's really important, you know, in our lives, is finding the essence. So before we get into more of this, and you know, Raven's going to take us off, I saw there was a beautiful comment that someone said. It says, my altar, or altars for our ancestors during Dia de los Muertos, we lay out candles and yellow flowers, xochitl flowers, so the ancestor spirits can find their way to their altar and offering. And yes, and also when we remember, this is about remembrance too, Dia de los Muertos. If we remember our family, then they can continue to have their journey. And then I see performance art is a kind of temporary altar as well. No? Oh, yes. So when we have this body, you know, we can do everything with it, and that can, you know, be the stage, right? Like I think Roman said, is the stage is an altar. Life is the altar. We are creating space, but when it has to be focused, and it has to have intention, right? Because not just anything can be an altar, but you have to have that intention, and awaken that space. It's already awakened, but we have to have the eyes to see. So, Raven, what do you got for us about this connection with dreams, altars, and the altered realities of dreams?
Yeah, great. Just want to shout out to my Paran, my godfather, just showed up. Oh my God, thank you so much for coming.
Awesome.
So I'm really moved by everything you said, and really I want to bring out the strongest connection that we can understand between the physical realm, where we have our physical body, which is what we call our physical body of earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and space, and these material elements that are in this realm, and the subtle body, and which is the mind. We call it the mind, but the Sanskrit term is manas, and the intelligence, or buddhi, and the ahankara. Which is, we say false ego, but a better description of it would be the part that says I am matter. And so matter, you know what matter is, right? Matter is You can write it down on the bottom if you have your own definition. Matter is the unconscious energy that's surrounding us, we are conscious, right? We have life coming out of us, but can matter, dull matter, form into a personality? It can't on its own. We have to give it life. So in Sanskrit and from the Bhagavad Gita, the term matter is related to Prakriti. So Prakriti, or the world of matter, is actually a temporary, dull world. And we're only visiting here. So this should help you get into the idea that maybe this place is like a dream world. Maybe it's not really where we're from, you know, like we're only a tiny bit. And so it automatically creates like a dream-like effect. Whereas when you're in a dream, you're there for a temporary amount of time. However, it can seem like forever, right? Time can distort in dreams. So we're experiencing a similar time distortion here in the material realm of Prakriti, where we're telling ourselves every day, and we believe that we are Hankara, or that we are matter, that we are going to disintegrate and die. Okay, and that's what we think it. We become fearful. And so what we're learning, all forms of yoga and consciousness raising, is to know that we are not matter. We are Aham Brahmasmi. We are the Atma. We are from the world of Brahman, which is where all of this comes from. It's where 1/3 of where we are, the material world, Prakriti, it comes from the source. And people say it looks like a light, and you know, it's really bright and it's great, right? Well, beyond that is an eternal world of forms. And it's eternity where everything exists forever. Everything you could imagine. It has life and forms and fun and planets and people and you and me, everyone. We're actually there. Imagine the Matrix. There's a place like that where you can go and it exists forever. So why should we purify ourselves then? Is it just like a religious term that we have to focus on, you know, we're bad, we're dirty, right? No, everyone's a little dirty now and then, right? Nothing wrong with that. But, you know, like, we're covered in matter. It's the whole thing around us. It's called guna. It's the goo. Imagine yourself, the real Atma. And it's like you're the Bonnie Reaver or somebody, and it's like you're an alien. You're like, oh, and you're like covered in goo, or you're like Neo in the Matrix. The goo that really exists. It's called guna, and forces, and they're covering your body. My guru Jeffrey Armstrong, he says we are guna covered, chakra covered Atmas. So we are the Atma, the immortal self, who we know who we are deep down inside, and that's who we always are, Satchidananda. And then we're covered in chakras, which is like an extensive manas field that connects us with the subtle bodies and all these things. And then we are covered with goo on top of that. It's a bunch of excrement all over us. Let's go on. So we need to gain freedom. Everyone's talking about freedom. Freedom, everybody. In Vogue, everyone wants freedom, liberation, right? And so this is a really important concept, and it has multiple levels. And so what yoga really is, and transformative yoga, which is going to integrate into the whole society, is to see how there's different levels of freedom. This is what we need to understand. And so what is a yagya? We brought up the term yagya. A yagya is evam bahuvida yagya vitata brahmano mukhe karmajan viditan sarvan evam dhyanatva vimokshase. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to define it for you just quickly. Thus, through the many kinds of yagya, a wide variety of offerings are placed into the mouth of the transcendental Brahman. They are all born of various human actions. One who understands this will achieve moksha, freedom from bondage to matter, through the performance of yagya. So yagya is an act of gratitude that balances the earth. It's when we take our bodies and the earth and we put it in a fire, or we sweat every day in work, and we are putting that fire of our energy into producing consumer goods and food. Whatever you can imagine. These are all part of yagya. Offer that art, that food, that science, that anything to the devas. And in the Vedic society and other cultures, they describe the devas, who are receiving the sacrifices through the yajna, where we're like, thank you so much. We're putting it in the fire. Thank you. The smoke rises up to the top, right? That's actually going somewhere. And there's a sublimation. It's an esoteric science where our thoughts, our intentions, the swords, right? If you know about tarot, it becomes transformed through the fire into another realm where they receive it. And this is a cycle that's been going on since time immemorial, and we have to protect it, or else it will manifest as an artificial cycle. And we know about that, right? We live through it every day. We're like, this isn't right. Something's off. We're not balanced with nature. We're not, you know, so basically we need to get moksha. So moksha is what yajna, whenever we do these sacrifices, it gives us freedom. And what does moksha do? It protects you from old age, birth, disease, being in misery. We all get a taste of it when we do what we love, right? And so what altars are helping us. Let's bring it back to altars. The altar is the focal point where you are exchanging with the devas, who are part of a larger network, who are connected to Bhagavan and connected to Brahman, which is the source of where we're all coming from. And so,
and I just want to interject really quick, because I think what's really amazing right now that you're pushing in, and I feel that I kind of, you know, we're going deeper into what I basically said, and it's really this intentions. What are our intentions? So in this purification process, where our intention is to relate, to connect, to transform, and, you know, be in this communal space with, you know, devas, which, you know, it could be, again, devas could be also ancestors and, you know, any deity that you work with.
Yeah. And so really it's like a beautiful family that we're a part of. And so when we do a yajna, when we are using our intentions to get something from our actions, basically, it's like we're performing karma, essentially, then sometimes we can get into a material definition of it. And I feel like we feel the pangs of that, like the misery connected to going to work every day in our society while the whole world burns and gets flooded, people and diseases spread. So this shows us that there must be something beyond even material freedom, because when will this cycle ever end, right? Can we save the earth? Can we save ourselves even? So there are ways to bring that into harmony and to bring that into balance. And we have to perform those rituals, and we have to do these yajnas, or else the world will spin out of control, as you can see it is now. And so that's why with the indigenous movement and, you know, all the movements of understanding identity and understanding the environment are converging right now, so that we can unite to restore the natural laws with all of our different cultures together. And we haven't been doing that properly. So what's the point? What is real freedom? So real freedom will go even beyond the material realm. And this is where dreams come. How do you feel in a dream? You feel free, right? If you're lucid. And so this is what yoga is preparing you for. It's preparing you so that you can treat this world like a dream, where once you go through it's actually a very long process of waking up. You just don't wake up overnight. You're waking up from covered over by about 8,400,000 lifetimes, approximately, of covering your consciousness as you're going through samsara, picking up all of these different identities, right? And so we gain moksha by understanding that first, aham brahmasmi. I said this earlier. We are not matter. We are not the unconscious dull stuff that we toy with here in this Maya or this matrix. We are not that. First, understand that. Like, if you're playing a video game, right? Do you think you're actually the avatar in the game? You would be like, oh God, you kind of be like lost it, right? So why do you do that in your life now? Why do you believe that you really are your avatar, who is a temporary manifestation of yourself? So this is what yoga is telling us. Take off that cover, aham brahmasmi, and then you will no longer define with ahamkara. You will no longer think that you are the false version of yourself, which is due to our karma. So quickly, before I wrap up with talking about dreams, I wanted to give you some definitions about the subtle body and the physical body. So the physical body is the car. And the Sanskrit term for that, ironically, is Karana. So we are the Atmas in a Karana, and we're driving around this matrix or this Kshetra or this Kshetra, the Balakuru, etc. We're driving around the field like, you know, like Tron or something, like that movie, right? And so then you have the Anta Karana. So it's Karna with the prefix Anta. And that is the subtle body. All different sorts of psychology, religion, spirituality, cultures, they have different terms for these things. But in the original Sanskrit, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says the subtle body or the astral body, the thing that goes into the astral plane when you go to sleep, it's broken up into manas, which some people call the mind. And that is thinking, feeling, willing, and remembering. And then you have the buddhi, which is intelligence. But a better way to say that is your discernment. So it's how you discern from yes and no, left and right, right? It's like you have the brain.
Or if you're dreaming or you're awake, right? Exactly. That's how you would, yeah.
It helps you see that, you know, the duality and know that you are not the duality, that you are not that. And then you have the ahamkara. So the ahamkara is you saying that you are matter, okay? So this is like, imagine like an aroma floating in a wind. This is the subtle body that carries you from each body to each planet every time you go through the threshold of death. And it keeps you going. It's the movement itself, the spirit, right? It moves you. It literally does that. And so, okay, so how does this connect with dreams? So basically, dream yoga, it's very intense because it helps you go beyond your own unconsciousness when you're walking around matter. It helps you become more of an avatar in your real life to where you're realizing like, hey, I'm not this self. And if you're practicing that in your dreaming state, then you can easily do it in your waking state. Okay?
Okay.
Let's bring it back to the altar. Remember, the altar with an A is the focal point within matter, right? It's where we're sitting at an altar. It's the focal point in matter where Atmas, who we are, true our immortal selves, we disidentify with matter. And so at an altar, you concentrate, right? You're really concentrating. You're thinking about the other realms. You're thinking about who you really are. And so really an altar is altering your perception with an E. So remember that. Alter and alter with an A and with an E. It helps you alter your perception. And if you get really good at altars, you can work in harmony with the entities on the other side to change the outcomes of this world to make it better. Okay? So because altars are about cause and effect. All right? So it's like a little window where we practice cause and effect. So
I just want to mention, just interject a little bit. And I feel like this is something that we've been trying to show with prophecy, right? That prophecy, a lot of people think prophecy is in the past, but prophecy is something in the present, like, or in the future, sorry, prophecy is something in the future. But, you know, we really try to tell in like, you know, this idea of liminal space and that prophecy is right now, and understanding the cause and the effect, understanding that we can manipulate energy with intentions, with mantras, obviously working with, you know, the light, not necessarily with, you know, anything wanting to cause destruction, unless it's the destruction of the paradigm, the old paradigm, or the destruction of the patriarchy, which we're all for, and you can definitely set up altars for that. So yeah, keep on going about dreams.
All right.
And how do we,
dreams, because we want to get into tarot and questions with astrology. But one of the funnest things that I do on daily basis, I work with dreams. I've kept like 10 years worth of dream journals, and I remember dreaming when I was like really young. And just naturally, when you're doing a lot of altar work, when you're doing a lot of pujas, when you're chanting a lot of mantras, doing a lot of ceremonies, the dream world becomes very vivid for you. A lot of people, and even some people who don't. But there, you know, there's dream incubation, and science studies dreams, lucid dreaming, psychology. And I'm reading about that right now, and I'm thinking, well, what is the difference between going seeing a psychologist and then integrating dreams with astrology, integrating dreams with altar work, ancestor worship, all these things? What is the difference? And to me, so far, I found out the difference is you can be more active and become more of an agent in your life whenever you're fusing it with all the cultural knowledge instead of just keeping it in like a therapeutic setting or making it, you know, divorce it from its source. So because isn't that what yoga is about? It's about uniting everything towards the source. And so that's what I've been learning with Dream Yoga. I'm going to read a quote from like one of my favorite books on it, called The Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep. So it says, a successful dream yogi must be stable enough in presence to avoid being swept away by the winds of karmic emotions and lost in the dream. So on the flyer, I said, are we experiencing an awakening or are we lost in the dream? So many people have different opinions on this. However, it's neither. It's both of them. We're constantly cycling through samsara where we go into unconscious states where we forget that we're the Atma. And so life is like a dream. And this isn't the long-term place, this earth plane. It's like a dream laboratory. Feels like we're in like a mad lab sometimes, right? And it really is like that. If you think about all the entities that are engaging with us and then how we experiment with matter here. So you can I'll post it and so that you can see it and get this book. But you know, you can understand your karma whenever you're working with dreams. So the Tibetan book of Dream Yoga, The Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep. This book describes how karma stays in our subtle bodies. So remember I talked about the subtle body earlier? That is where karma lives. In your mind, in your intelligence, and in your false ego. It's attached to you, right? And so when we sleep, what happens? We withdraw from the physical body, the karana, and the subtle body takes us into where? The astral plane. And guess what? Did you know that the astral plane is the same place you go where you die? Wow. Every night we go to sleep and we practice dying. And so the yoga is...
Oh, yes. That's great.
Right? And so basically, and so what is that called? It's called karmic prana. You know about prana where you go like this? And you do all that, right?
Breathing, life source, yes.
There's karmic prana, and that's what we're riding on when we're in these dreams. So let's talk about 3 types of dreams right quick. Brief overview. Let's go really deep. So we have the samsaric dream, okay? And the samsaric dream is where you're just going through reiterations of your own karmic traces. And so it can be, that's like your basic dream interpretation, where you're like, I had a dream with like an alligator and then it like turned into a dove. And I was like, whoa, that's like totally connected to the Shekinah. And you know, that's really deep. And like, it reminds me of like living in Louisiana. Like whenever we do this dream interpretation on it, that is a samsaric dream most of the time. It's about samsara, our incarnating memories. It's in our mind, about our memories, our thoughts, our feelings, right? And those can be lucid or non-lucid, okay? And so then you have the second type of dream. And the second type of dream is essentially, it's very similar to the samsaric dream, but it's a little bit more clear. This is called the dream of clarity. And a lot of people probably have these too. I think with where we are right now, from where this book was written, so many people are practicing so many things and we're becoming so much more like subtle to like the veil. And I think that a lot of us are reaching these heights, but we gotta learn a little bit more. So maybe some of you are having samsaric dreams, but you're also having dreams of clarity. And so it's good to connect with gurus who train us in these things so that we can keep on the process. And so you'll know a dream of clarity because you'll feel like you're being drawn to something and that you're finding something. And you're like, oh, this teaching came to me, or this teacher came to me. But we weren't in the regular dream world where it was like a nightmare, or it just felt like a dream of clarity. And so I think that we should all explore this more in our lives to understand what these dreams are like. And so you can meet with real people. We talk about the astral plane. I think it's overlapping. This is our hypothesis that I'm exploring. So basically, the third type of dream is the clear light dream. And so the clear light that comes to you whenever you've reached that level, not many people have these. I can't really attest to this. I'm not going to say I've had a clear light dream because I don't know.
I think you have. You're very expert in the dream world.
to me, like maybe my version of a clear light dream would be like actually being with Krishna. Everyone might have their own different version, but the version that the book describes is in the Buddhist tradition, where you realize that you're not the subjective dream, or you're not the subjective dreamer, you're not the dream ego, and that there is no dualistic relationship between you and the dream content. To me, it just mirrors the feeling of nirvana, where you reach that level of connection with source. So basically, I hypothesize, and this is my little spiel on it because I practice Tantric Vaishnavism. I'm training to be a Jyotish in my guru's lineage. And so Jyotish is astrology, Vedic astrology. And every night, the moon moves into a different part of the sky. So what I discovered when I started practicing yoga more deeply was that I could manipulate my dreams to be interactive with the lunar placements, because I noticed that certain archetypes would come up that match the symbols associated with where the moon was. And to me, I noticed that about like 5 years ago. And so I really started to gear my practice around even more, like paying attention to what nakshatra the moon was in, and getting divining, even, you know, getting omens and all sorts of different stuff. So this is kind of where I wanted to wrap up in talking about how, like, me and Daya, we even do fun things in the dream realm. We have like a dream night where we try to get together. It's when the moon is in Ashlesha. And so that's like a snake part of the sky in Cancer. And so we practice doing rituals or using certain crystals on a certain night every month where we try to match our dreams. And it happens all the time with it when I do it with my friends, but Daya and I are working on building our relationship with that. And so that's just one thing that you can do. And so it's not just like a whimsical thing, dream yoga, it's actually connecting us with each other. And science says that when you share your dreams with people, like the most, like, I can't remember her name right now, but she's like a Harvard scientist, where she studies dreams, and she studied all the dreams of the pandemic. And she noticed that when everyone was having all these nightmares, the best thing about dream incubation is that when you share your dreams with other people, imagine, you know, you become so much more empathetic. And it's actually the structures that we're fighting right now in our economy and the government authoritarianism that crops up. It really doesn't want us to have the ability to do this, because this is one of the most like revolutionary things where we can gain freedom, where we're connecting in the dream world. So if you want to become a radical revolutionary who can connect with your comrades in the dream world, it will give you some interesting tips, but just a couple of them are pay attention to where your bed's positioned. You can study that a little bit deeper, but you can change dreams if you move your bed in a certain direction. Daya talked about that. Keep a dream journal. Pay attention to the nakshatra or where the moon is on that night. It depends on your chart. These are samsaric dreams. When you're studying the nakshatra, you're seeing how your karma is manifesting in your astral plane world and how it creates that. And then once you start to trace your samsaric dreams and see, like, oh, this is what my internal language is about my dreams, where I interpret them, then you become a master of the samsaric dreams, which is what I think I've moved on past into the clear light dreams. Not clear light, the dreams of clarity. The one right after samsara, where you constantly finding something or getting inspiration, like artists, you know, they found it comes to them. The dream is more clear. You can manipulate it more. And so using crystals, you can adjust your dreams with crystals. Like sometimes like a crystal can make you teleport in a dream. It can make you expand yourself in a dream. You can turn yourself into different avatars at will. And I say at will. At first, it kind of happens on accident. But when you do it over and over again, you start to do it at will. And it becomes like pressing a button. Like, for example, if I want to have a dream where I go swim in a black lake and meet this crazy witch in Russia, like some guy, and I call it, because, you know, it is different than dreaming.
No, I love that. I love that. Because I'm like, it's not even a joke. It's not even a joke. I'm just laughing because this is real.
She's up there, like this. So dream incubation, whenever you're just using your mind and you're trying to use it with just your mind. But I like using crystals because it's like a wild card, and it builds a relationship with nature, right? And it's like, it's interesting. So lastly, you can use mirrors. If you put a mirror by your bed, you can train yourself as you're falling asleep to fall back into the mirror, so that as soon as you go into your dream, you see yourself falling into the mirror, and then you take yourself, you use it like a signpost in Sonic or Mario. You know how like you want to save a game? Like you can use
I love that. It's yes. And you know what? And you did you have one more tip?
Oh, one more.
Raven?
Altar.
Yeah.
That's where we're ending. Altar. I have the most part about an altar dream, and I have this well, I don't have her right now, but she's like a little Dine Navajo blanket weaver. And I put a blue apatite next to her, and blue apatite is a dream crystal. And I had one on her altar, and I had one under my pillow. And immediately in that dream, she took me into Navajo country, and I was like there and with her.
Wow.
We were climbing all over the mountains, and she was like a spider, and she was like, you need to jump off the side. And I was like, no. And so the altar is a little model controller joystick for you and other dimensions. So yeah.
I love that. And you know, Raven, thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge. I mean, I can literally sit and hear all of your wisdom when it comes to dreams. I mean, honestly, it's an honor to even sometimes share our dreams together. And like you said, this is something that Indigenous people, and I want to mention one thing before we get into the tarot, you know, and just looking at, I was thinking the little past, present, future, Virgo season, Libra season, Scorpio season, because we're not in Scorpio season yet. But I want to add, just to conclude our conversation about altars and dreams, you know, one thing about me is that I also have a lot of dreams. I went really deep into some of my past life dreams, so I kind of stopped wanting to go too aware of my dreams, because I could see there were more samsaric dreams, you know, and they were more like past things that I'm dealing with in my own dream world. So if my regular life is already kind of heavy, I don't want to kind of remember everything that I'm doing in my dreams. So I can see that I've kind of differentiated that. One of the things that I really loved to do as a child was to fly. And we talked about freedom. And, you know, what we notice is when we start getting older, you know, our dreams, we tend to forget our dreams. We tend to disconnect from our dream world, because literal society is disconnecting us from our dreams in reality. And so it's very important that we, you know, use our altars, use, you know, these tips and things like that, our processes, for not just this purification process of things, but for love, for bhakti, you know, for, you know, the fact that we want to realize who we are. Someone brought up an ego death, but we have to understand that there's two egos. There's the false ego and there's the real ego. The Atma, you know, this is the soul. This is what we're trying to awaken, and we can connect with in many different realms, and, you know, and we can dream awake. And so let's just get into, you know, the past. You know, we had the Virgo season that for both of us was really, you know, hermit mode, for real. It was like, you know, we're like coming out in Libra season, like creeping out here, but we're here, and we're so happy that, you know, people can, you know, be here with us and, you know, journey with us, because ultimately prophecy is something, what we notice is beyond us. And it's such a wonderful thing to do. So just going into the past, Raven, do you want to say anything?
Past is from like our Rider Waite. Queen of Wands, you know, I think overall as a collective, our power of understanding that the vision is really all we need right now to move forward. And in order to cultivate that vision, you should protect it in an altar, you know, which basically means strengthening your relationship between your sight, which is, it means your ability to discern, your ability to treat your brain and your mind as if you can manipulate it and change it. And I think that that's what the Queen of Wands is very good at, because she's like plasma. And so plasma is always moving. It's not stagnant. It's like a star. So we really should come into that power and all connect our emotions with our actions better.
Oof.
And we always want to be happy.
That connects exactly with I pulled some oracles. So we're talking about the past, right? We're talking about Virgo season, what we learned, what are we coming into Libra season with, and what are we taking to Scorpio? And so I pulled the divine feminine with the solar plexus, and that is exactly what the Queen of Wands is. You know, she is the divine feminine in her power, you know, totally inspired. And so I think that right now we're coming into this point where, you know, now we've rested, we went internal, we're aligning our emotions and our emotional bodies with our power and everything like this. And this is what's going to create, you know, this moment in time to really, oh, we have the divine masculine coming out,
Oh my
King
God,
of Wands and the Queen of Wands.
Happening. Watch, when two stars collide, boom. What happened? Supernova, right? That's what it's going to be for us. If we see that we need to be hermits simultaneously as we are, you know, fiery personalities. And that is the balance of yogis in this world. We can't go out into the forest. I mean, we can if we want. But there's also a lot going on in the urban center, in the center where people are being, you know, massacred. Their dreams are being massacred, you know, like this is why we do this in the passionate way that we do this, so that we don't distance ourselves from the truth, and that we need to use these teachings to uplift society and, you know, have the vision of the King of Wands and the Queen of Wands married together in each
beautiful. And let's say like that's what we're coming into. So that's what we're learning, right? We learned this. We're learning how to have that inspiration, that fire, and then we're coming into Libra season where it's going to be a little bit more blossoming, right? Go, perfect. Oh, actually, okay, go ahead. Talk about so we're talking Libra season now, and you got the Ace of Swords.
If you watch the little story I did right before this, we're aligning. We got two swords going on.
I actually pulled the Ace of Swords at one point during this hour. So yeah, so right now it's all about clarity. So now we're clear. We had a lot of healing to do in that hermit mode. There was a lot of things to discover and to know. And now I feel that this Libra season, which goes until the 16th, because we're looking at the sun, we're looking at astronomically, the sun goes into Libra, the sign of Libra, on the 16th. And so, I'm sorry, yeah, 16th of October goes until November 16th. And so
Scorpio,
it's all about clarity. And then it'll be Scorpio, November 16th. Yeah. But right now it's all about clarity. I think it's because our vision is clear, we're inspired, we're healing, and we're aligning. And what is that? Oh, Swati. Yes.
Right now we're in an area of Libra with the sun that's all about movement and Hanuman. So do some Hanuman chants.
Oh, okay. And now I'm going to pick another tarot from my Native American tarot deck, see what comes out. For right now, at this moment, the energy, if you read my collective reading, there was a lot of swords there, actually, with the 10 of Swords and the 6 of Swords. So it's nice to see that Ace of Swords too. And then we're getting, what do you got?
Go ahead.
Oh, I got the Towers coming out, present tense, with the 4 of Wands on the bottom of the deck, which says honor. So that's really interesting. The Tower and then the 4 of Wands.
Who are these people in my reading? Is it y'all? Because I love y'all. Thank you. I got everybody is here. We got the Queen, the King of Wands, and we got the Queen of Discs and the Queen of Cups. I think really marrying that, once again, that intuitive knowing of what's right and matching that with a practice and matching it with a vision, matching it with steps, practical steps as we enter into Capricorn, so Sagittarius, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn. By the time we go into Capricorn, you know, Saturn and Jupiter are going to be going into these earthy realms, and, you know, they're already in the earthy realms and they're going to be moving out of there. So we have to really ground with all the elements right now so that we can not be manipulated by artificial anything, information, or the artificial system that's trying to take over the earth and kill it whenever we know we got to go
there,
right? We gotta go.
It's the Tower. We're you know, and you know, I think this is not just Libra season, but it's something that's just happening in the collective energy. Is this Tower moment where the old system is really trying really hard to keep sustaining itself, but it's unsustainable. The system is unsustainable, and that's why there's a Tower moment that needs to be had in each individual, because we need to awaken that we are, you know, again, we're not this body, you know, we're something beyond this body, and you know, then we can like see beyond the veil. And this is why we're doing our dream work. This is why we're doing our altars, so that we're not getting caught up in the world of matter with temporary frills and thrills and things like that, I mean, it's fine. We can all like love pleasure and stuff like that. And one thing we didn't talk about, but when it comes to rituals and finding the freedom, because we're talking about freedom as well with our altars and dreams, is how to find the freedom in the ritual, how to find the freedom in the discipline. And no matter what tower moments are happening in this moment, which is just changing and transforming all different foundations, it's allowing us to really see what matters. And honestly, when I have a really stressful day and I'm like, so many tower moments are happening, you know, in my mind, around me, all this stuff, my altar is what saves me. Because I know at least in that space, there is no judgment. There is nothing to do besides to sing and commune and offer or maybe dancing, you know, and doing these things. So if you feel like you're in a tower moment for right now, you know, as we're going into the winter season, just secure yourself and know that everything is being shaken that's no longer needed, so we can go into, you know, a more balanced, balanced worldview. So did you want to say anything about right now, or are we going to go into what's happening in the future?
I'm ready to go to Scorpio, because guess who pulled the 6 of Cups? Moi. It's all about Scorpio.
Yeah, nice.
I was like, how can we like really go into the future and make all this a reality? Make this moksha a reality. Pleasure is so important, and an altar is like should be your center of pleasure that's going to take you out of this world. And so when we're going into Scorpio, make sure to use all of your energy, sexual energy, you know, it's rajas, it's creative energies. And so all these different like vortexes where we do acts or actions can be, you know, sacred. And it's really important to do that. And then also to use every form of matter for pleasure, you know, but for a higher pleasure. You shouldn't be focusing on your own desires during this time in isolation. So practice that. Practice how everything you can do can be an offering to make the world a better place. That's actually bhakti. That's called bhakti whenever you see the consciousness and the love and everything. It's the love whenever you're buying materials, like buy it with love. Think about who made it. Think about where it's coming from. Think about where it's going to go whenever it's gone. Think about the cycles of nature. That is pleasurable. Why? Because we're trying to preserve this pleasurable atmosphere for the future. It's really all we have to do. We kind of take that for granted. The most selfish thing that we could do is like, you know, to just think about our own temporary pleasures and unfortunately, what America has done to the rest of the world, you know, kind of put under a spell, right? And if we can have pleasure, but it doesn't have to be destructive. So let's think about that. How to not have pleasure, but have it not be destructive. So in the future, so this is the full moon in Aquarius right now, because Saturn and Jupiter are going into Aquarius. We're at the end of the age of Pisces. We're getting a taste of whenever Saturn and Jupiter will go into Aquarius when the whole cycle will enter into the age of Aquarius. So as we're understanding that they're in Aquarius now, feel like you were in that age of Aquarius. Just be there. Don't wait. Just be there. You're not there yet. But what does age of Aquarius mean? It means you know all the stuff. You know, like we're in the age of Pisces technically. You have the intelligence, but we should start acting like it's all of the great things that we like yearn for and do it consciously so that we can actually manifest it. So that starts with astral work, and it starts with altar work, and it's combining those things and treating the earth like an altar, because we're only here temporarily. And if you are still needing to be in this university, you will come back and reap what you sow. So sow some good seeds. And let's open up for questions.
Yeah, open up for questions for sure. If you have a question, please drop it down. I'm just going to piggyback on that because from what I pulled with my Earth Warriors deck, and we're just, you know, you talk about pleasure and you like, you know, even this is so pleasurable to me to speak of these topics, to speak of this. I really.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Way of the divine feminine revealed. And so it's really interesting because we have divine feminine coming out twice, and this is from the past, and this is going to the future. And so, when we see that this is something we're learning to integrate into our day to day, is the divine feminine, and it is bhakti, it is love, it is seeing, and being of this. And this is why, there is love when we speak of these topics, because we are relishing, and finding the pleasure in the rituals, and not seeing it as dogma or seeing it as something that's entrapping us, which is what the church did, because they said that if you don't do this, then something bad is going to happen to you. But it's better to think, if we do this, we're communing, and it doesn't become, just like we're going to wake up and we're going to brush our teeth and we're going to talk to our family and we're going to do all these things and we're going to go to our altar, we're going to offer some incense, we're going to cook some breakfast, we're going to say some prayers. All of this is all going to help us tap more into this divine feminine, this love, this bhakti, this unconditional stuff, and we're going to create a beautiful place with this card, a beautiful place, Amaru. And I think that this is just showing that we're going towards a beautiful place where we can be more in tune with our feminine, our feminineness. And I didn't say this, we didn't talk much about divine feminine and masculine, but the altar space could be a very feminine place, because it's very much both, because it's a receiving place where it's receiving in the offerings, but it's also giving because it's the power, it's the action. And so we're meeting this. And right now, what we really need in our world is more divine feminine. We need to balance the polarities within us and within society at large. If there is any questions, what do you got there?
And lastly, with Ganesh, he comes out with the capacity to love. And what happens when you mix all of this beauty and knowledge and wisdom? You get the capacity to love. And isn't that what art, beauty, and real wealth is supposed to be about? It's about love, to where you're receiving all these things from the universe so that you can give it back in a cycle of reciprocation. So if anyone has any questions, we're going to end on this note. And
yes, someone does have a question. So Sal de Tierra, Luz de la Luna, or de Luna, would you consider the mind an altar? So I'll let you, I'll answer this, and then you can go deeper into it, Raven. So for me, because the mind is just a subtle body, it can be seen as an altar if you think, again, the mind is so subtle that it's really a place of the universal consciousness where all consciousness exists, and basically where we're observing thoughts. That's how I view the mind, is that it's a place where we observe thoughts, and it's either we're going to keep this thought and we're going to keep reeling in this thought and going with this thought. We're going to let this thought pass. We're going to bring in another thought, right? So this sense, I would say it is an altar, and that's why we have to make sure that we're doing mantras, and we have to make sure we're doing the purification process, because our mind, it's going to do whatever we practice. So if we're practicing things and we're doing the purification, it's going to be purifying the mind. So an altar, can be used to help purify the mind. Mantras, chanting, and things like that can help with the process of purifying the mind and cleaning it, so that you can have these more expansive and advanced thoughts.
Yeah,
Raven?
I agree. So basically, the mind, remember I defined it as manas. And so the manas is, imagine that it's like a hand and it has fingers on it. The mind has fingers, imagine it like a hand. And so you have thinking, where you're thinking, and you have feeling, where you feel things. And can't you feel things throughout your whole body? The chakras, they're a part of the altar of your body. And so you're feeling, that's your mind. Let's start thinking, that's your mind and the chakras. But your mind isn't just here. That's where the brain is. But the mind goes all over the body. Science proves that, but we're trying to connect these things. So, and then you have, so thinking, feeling, willing. What is willing? It's what you do. It's what you do, right? And then you have memory. And memory is connected to all fields of consciousness. And we're going in and out of that memory to, to bring up the perceptions. And so the mind is remember, here comes that play on words, altar. It is an altar where you can alter your perceptions. And so if we do all these practices that were brought up where you're connecting the mind like a plug into knowledge, like you have a computer and you're like plugging it in into like the internet of wisdom, you start to think, I need to get some, what's that little air in a can? And you just like spray it, you know, and it's like cleans out your keyboard.
Aerosol.
Aerosol, right? It's like you like use it like aerosol. Mantras, it's like literally air coming out of your mouth. That's like an aerosol for your mind. And it just gets out all the dust. And remember, what is the dust? It's matter. It's just covering you. So yes, I would agree the mind is an altar. It's the most important altar that we have.
Well, no, I was actually gonna differ, because the mind would just be like a part of the temple. Like it's like you know, it's like a part, it's like the, you know, because the temple is the body, and then the altar, let's say, would be the heart where the Atma would be sitting, right? And that would be the main altar. But you would have the process of coming, it's the process of entering into the altar, because that's what our thoughts are going to be connecting us to our heart space. And so it's more like, to me, now that I'm like hearing it, it's more of the process of how to enter. It's kind of like the door to the Atma, because you're going through the intelligence with the wisdom, making sure that you're cleansed and you're doing these whatever it is in your practice that's making you more like a vessel, so that you can finally get into the deeper altar, the more esoteric altar, the more deeper thing. And so someone Sad said, can there be bad altars or sick altars, and how does one recognize these? Altars need to be cleansed. Altars need, you know, to be loved. They, you know, so I don't know if there can be considered a bad altar, but definitely altars need to be cleansed. And so if the altar is neglected, definitely you don't want to neglect an altar, because there is sacred space there. So you want to always, at least, even if it's not daily, at least, you know, once a month or sometime, cleanse your altar, because it's collecting energy as well. So you want to make sure that your altar is purified. Anything else with that, Rave?
Yeah, totally. It depends on what guna you want to be in. So we have different types of altars. We have a Rajasic altar, which is, you know, very much about creating form, and it can be, you know, it goes to Ayurveda. And then you have like, it's like fiery, and maybe you like throw your altar together really fast and you're like, I just need a quick altar, right? And that's like a little that's the mode of Rajas. But then you have the Sattvic altar. And a Sattvic altar, you're always maintaining it. You make sure that it's like, it's love. You always put water on it. It's to your liking. And then you have the Tamasic altar. You just left it completely and you've forgotten it and it misses you. And it's like, it doesn't mean it's bad. Like these states are not bad or good. Guess what another Tamasic altar is? Ask an Agori. It's the crematorium, right? So for each and every guna, there is someone there to receive that love. So wherever you are, you practice there and you work with your own altar and you learn more so that you can bring it to a state where you can maintain it. Doesn't have to be any hard, fast rules. Just keep experimenting and you will find the love in whatever you're doing. So just make sure it's directed towards moksha. Freedom.
And intention, I think, and it's all about intention, right? Because if you're creating an altar, you can, like a lot of brujeria, there can be, you know, black brujeria where you're cursing people and you're doing these things. And so, again, it is all about intention. Altars can be, you know, considered negative or, you know, considered harmful, you know, because there's a harming of it. But it can also be, you know, a place for manipulation for good as well. So, you know, again, it's all on intention to me. If there's one more question, we'll leave it in a minute. I don't know, Raven, you want to close up with anything? I think this was amazing. This was so inspiring, just to work with my own altars, especially after, you know, right now, Dia de los Muertos, and then, you know, yesterday, and I've just been having these different realizations with my altars and in my home in general, and the altar within me, and then the purification of dancing and realizing that, you know, we go through our own, you know, purification process within. And so I'm just elated to be able to share this energy with everyone. And so, woo! Let's go have some dreams. You know, I was just going to say one more thing. I brought out my blue kyanite. You know, my blue kyanite, for me, I bought this in a really hard time in my life. And this brings me so much more peace and calmness. If I'm ever, you know, having a very stressful week, or my mind is getting really the best of me and it's like I can't calm myself down, blue kyanite, recommended. Sleep with it, hold it in your hand, so healing.
Yeah, astral projection stone.
Yes, yeah, and so it's just a really good for the dream states, and like any, obviously, blue stones. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you, Raven, for your time, for your wisdom, and for this communion as well, and creating sacred space, because ultimately, you know, even though I'm not necessarily in my home, I still have my sacred space here. You're obviously with your sacred space, and so this is just a beautiful time so we can honor, you know, our ancestors, as we are both mixed blood, and we have, you know, many different ancestors, many different bloods within us, and we honor those. We honor our teachers who are living this as an example for us to follow. And yeah, so we just so amazing. Thank you guys so much. We love you too. Thank you for showing up.
Okay, you can't do this without you. Just always reach out for questions. If you want to book a reading, you know, let us know. We're here for you.
Yes, yes. Aho. Well, Jai Ma, Jai Gurudev, Jai.
Jai Ganesha.
Haribol.
Oh, Jai
Haribol.
Ram. Jai Ram. All right, let's go.
Yeah, and then right now, you know what's funny? I was just going to say this really quick, is today, right now, the moon is in Hasta, and you were like, you know, the mind, what did you say? Like I think you were like, the mind is in, and I'm like, oh, Hasta, Hamsa. So if you guys want tonight, you know, you can do a hand massage, maybe do some mudras, you know, doing some mudras tonight before you go to bed, and sending an intention to, like, you know, do something fun in your dreams tonight.
Have fun. Like, also,
have fun.
Watch a comedy. If you've been kind of down, Hasta is a great time to just get into your laughing spirit. Watch something funny.
Okay, perfect. Thank you guys. Had.
All right,
bye. Mahadev, Shiva. Bye. Welcome to Prophecy. Are you ready to dive deep into altars and altered realities like dreams and dream yoga and sacred